They say a wolf always knows when she's being watched. I used to laugh at that, dismiss it as one of those old sayings whispered by the elders to keep pups from wandering too far into the woods. But the night it happened, the night I first felt eyes on me from the darkness, I stopped laughing. Because once you feel it, that weight pressing against your spine, that breath you cannot hear but somehow sense, never forget it. My name is Alara. I wasn't anyone important in the pack. Just another wolf trying to keep my head down, helping in the gardens, running errands when asked, blending into the background where life was quiet and safe. I told myself I liked it that way. But deep down, I knew I was waiting for something I couldn't name. Something that haunted me in dreams where the moon turned blood red and a voice whispered my name as if it belonged to him. Whoever he was, ordinary life in the pack was filled with rhythm. Early mornings marked by the sound of pups racing through the clearing. Afternoons heavy with the smell of fresh bread from the communal ovens. Evenings when the forest wrapped us in its endless arms and the air grew sharp with pine and shadow. Safety was the one gift we clung to. And still, safety never stopped the dreams. The first time the dream came, I stood in a meadow lit by silver light. The grass moved like water and the moon hung so close it looked ready to shatter. I wasn't alone. A figure stood at the edge of the meadow, tall, broad, the air around him thrumming with authority. His face was hidden, but his presence set my blood on fire. He reached out to me, his voice like smoke and thunder. Mine, and then I'd wake. Always before I could reach him. Always before I could see his eyes. I told myself it was nothing more than a restless mind. But as the days stretched on, the dreams grew sharper, more insistent. And then came the shadow. It was late autumn when I first felt it walking alone by the river, gathering herbs before the frost claimed them. The wind carried the faintest hint of something wild, something ancient. I paused, crouched low, and the hairs on my neck prickled. The forest was still, too still. I turned, and that's when I saw it. A figure, half hidden between the trees, watching. Not moving, not breathing, or if he was, I couldn't hear it. My chest tightened, my pulse drumming in my ears. I blinked, and he was gone. Just gone. But the smell lingered. Not human. Not rogue. Something else. Something that carried both danger and familiarity. I should have told someone. I should have run straight back to the safety of the pack house. But instead, I stood rooted in place, my heart torn between terror and longing. Because deep down, in some place, I didn't dare acknowledge. I knew what the figure meant. The mate bond. I'd grown up hearing about it. The unbreakable thread the moon goddess ties between destined souls. Some wolves spent their whole lives waiting for it, yearning for it, whispering about it under the stars. Others claimed it was a curse, a chain that could strangle as easily as it could embrace. I never thought much about IT till that night by the river. When the shadow's gaze followed me even after it vanished. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I burned the herbs I tried to dry. I spilled water on the floor of the kitchen. Every sound made me jump. Every flicker of movement at the edge of my vision sent my thoughts racing. By the time the sun sank low and painted the horizon in blood and gold, I could barely breathe from the weight of unease pressing on me. That night, the dream returned. The meadow. The silver light. The figure at the edge, closer this time. His hand extended, trembling not with weakness, but with restraint. His voice wrapped around me like chains and silk all at once. Elara, my name. He had never spoken it before. I gasped, my heart thundering as if it would break free of my ribs. I reached for him, desperate, tears burning at the corners of my eyes. Just one more step and I would see him. Just one more, the dream shattered. I woke in darkness, the sound of my own ragged breathing filling the small room. My window was open. I swore I had closed it before bed. The curtains stirred, though no wind moved outside, and then I smelled it again. That same wild, haunting scent from the woods. I froze, my pulse a drumbeat of fear and fascination. Slowly, carefully, I turned my head toward the window. A shadow stood there, half hidden by the frame. the pale moonlight casting only the outline of a figure. His shoulders broad, his presence impossible to deny, and though I could not see his face, I felt it deep inside. He was the one from the dream, the one who whispered my name across the meadow of my soul, the moon. Goddess had bound me too, and with a voice low and broken, he spoke into the silence of my room. Forgive me. Then he was gone, gone like a ghost. But his words lingered in the darkness, curling around me like smoke, chilling me to the bone. The morning after should have been ordinary. It should have been filled with the soft chatter of pups, the sound of bread ovens warming, the smell of earth and pine clinging to the cool air. But nothing felt ordinary anymore. Not after the shadow at my window. Not after the whisper that still clawed at my chest. Forgive me. I rose before the others, washing my face in the icy basin water, staring at my reflection until the ripples blurted into someone unrecognizable. My skin was pale, my eyes too wide. It was as if I were waiting for something or someone to step out from the trees and claim me. But no one came. I told myself it had only been a dream, a trick of the moonlight, a restless imagination that had carried me too far. Yet as I stepped outside, the air bit sharper, the silence heavier. Wolves I passed on the trail looked at me a fraction too long, as though sensing something had shifted, as though they smelled what I smelled, wildness lingering around me, a mark invisible but undeniable. Whispers began. Quiet at first, carried on the wind. She's acting strange dreams again. No, it's more than that. I lowered my head and kept walking, clutching the basket in my hands tighter than I should have. My fingers trembled. It wasn't just their whispers that unsettled me. It was mine, because every step, every breath, I could still feel him. The Alpha. Cale Dot the Truth had struck me the moment he spoke at my window. That voice deep, commanding, yet frayed with sorrow. There was no mistaking it. I had known it from pack gatherings, from the way wolves bowed their heads as he passed. Our Alpha, our leader, the man bound by duty to protect us all, and yet bound also to me. I couldn't speak it aloud. Not to anyone. To claim the Alpha as my mate without his mark, without his acceptance, would be seen as arrogance. Worse, delusion. But my soul knew. My bones knew. And still, his words tore at me. Forgive me. What did I have to forgive? Why did it sound like a man already burdened with guilt? I tried to bury the thoughts under the weight of routine. I gathered herbs, mended baskets, fetched water from the well. But each moment cracked at the edges. The river seemed to still the forest too watchful. The laughter of pups too hollow. As if a shadow had slipped beneath everything and unsettled the ground we walked upon. It wasn't just me. 2 days later, I found Marin, one of the elder women, standing at the edge of the woods, her eyes narrowed into the dark. She clutched her shawl as if it were armor. When I greeted her, she startled, as though pulled from some trance. Strange sounds last night, she murmured, her voice low. Wolves howling, but not ours. A shiver ran down my spine. Rogues. Perhaps. Her gaze flicked to me, sharp, searching. Then she leaned closer, whispering so softly I almost missed it. Or something older. Before I could ask, she turned away, disappearing into the winding paths between the houses. I stood rooted, the air heavy with questions I could not ask. That night, the dream returned. But this time, it was different. The meadow was gone. Instead, I stood in the forest, moonlight fractured through the canopy. Cale emerged from the shadows, not distant, not hidden. His face was clear now, every line carved with strength and sorrow. His eyes burned into mine, fierce and unyielding, yet laced with despair. I reached for him. This time, he did not hesitate. He took my hand, his grip firm, almost desperate. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "Why?" My voice trembled. He shook his head violently, his thumb brushing against my hand as though the bond itself were torture. "Because fate is cruel, Ilara, and I cannot be what you need." Before I could answer, the forest behind him erupted into fire and shadow. A howl split the dream, one so mournful it rattled my very bones. Kale was ripped from my grasp. Swallowed by the blaze, I woke with a scream, sweat slicking my skin, the scent of smoke still clinging to my throat. The next morning, my hands shook as I kneaded bread dough with the others. My eyes darted to every window, every corner, and though no one spoke of it, I could feel the unease weaving through the pack like threads of a net, tightening with every day. I hesitated, fear-battling curiosity. My wolf growled beneath the surface, warning me of hidden dangers. But the pull of the pendant, the faint spark it ignited inside me, was undeniable. It was as if a door had opened in my mind, a fragment of truth I had been searching for but couldn't yet comprehend. "What is it?" I whispered, reaching out with trembling fingers to take it. The figure's amber eyes met mine, unwavering, almost sorrowful. "It is part of the path you must follow. But beware, the abyss tests all who enter it. Only those with courage, resolve, and the willingness to face themselves can hope to survive. The rest are lost." I took the pendant, the metal cold but comforting in my palm. The bond throbbed faintly in response, Kale's presence echoing in the back of my mind, though I pushed it aside. For the first time since our separation, a tiny spark of hope flickered, fragile, almost imperceptible, but real. "Will I see him again?" I asked, voice barely audible, almost a plea to the shadows themselves. The figure tilted their head. "Perhaps, but first, you must survive the darkness within yourself. Only then will the path reveal itself." With that, the figure melted back into the shadows, leaving me alone once more, holding the pendant, heart pounding, and senses on high alert. The forest was still dark, still dangerous, but the spark remained a faint promise, a cryptic clue, a tether of hope in a night that threatened to swallow me whole. I pressed the pendant to my chest, the metal warm against my skin, and whispered to myself, determination hardening within me, I will not give in. I will find the truth, and I will fight, even if I must face the abyss alone. The forest seemed to breathe around me, shadows shifting, and I realized, though the path was perilous, though I was alone and hunted, though Kale was out there somewhere, perhaps wounded or captured, the faint spark of hope would guide me. And for the first time since the battle, I felt it, a fragile, dangerous, but undeniable glimmer of courage. The abyss awaited, and I would not step back. The moon hung low in the sky, its silver light filtering through the dense canopy of the forest, casting fractured patterns across the ground. My chest tightened as I pressed through the underbrush, clutching the pendant the mysterious figure had given me. Every step was cautious, every sound amplified in the silent tension of the night. I wasn't expecting anyone, least of all Kale. After the chaos, the confrontation, the betrayal, I had convinced myself that we were broken beyond repair. And yet a part of me, the part that the bond had rooted deep within, longed for him. Even as fear and suspicion warred with desire, a sudden rustle froze me mid-step. My wolf growled beneath my skin, tense and alert. Silver eyes appeared from the shadows, piercing through the darkness. My breath caught in my throat. "Kale," I whispered, barely daring to speak. He stepped into the faint moonlight, every movement cautious, controlled, yet charged with intensity. The battle scars on his arms, the cut along his cheek, the way he carried himself, it was clear he had fought hard, survived, and yet been hurt in ways that matched my own inner turmoil. "Alara," he breathed, voice low, raw with emotion I hadn't heard in weeks. You're here." I swallowed hard, instinctively stepping back, though the bond throbbed insistently, demanding proximity. "Kale," I said, my voice trembling, "I didn't know if you were alive. If I would ever see you again?" His eyes softened, but only for a fleeting second, replaced quickly by a storm of doubt and guarded intensity. I thought I had lost you," he said, each word deliberate, heavy with meaning. "After what happened, I didn't know if you could forgive me, if you could trust me again." I hesitated, torn between the ache of longing and the sting of betrayal. I don't know if I can, I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. After the breaking point, after everything, I don't know if the bond alone is enough. Kale stepped closer, eyes never leaving mine, the forest between us shrinking with every heartbeat. Alara, listen, he said urgently. I never meant to hurt you. The choices I made, the things I couldn't tell you, I did them to protect you, to survive, to keep the bond alive. I wanted to believe him. My wolf growled, sensing his truth beneath the layers of secrecy, but my human mind was entangled in doubt. Protect me, or protect yourself, I asked, voice trembling with a mixture of fear, anger, and desire. Kale's jaw tightened, and he took another step forward, bridging the distance between us. Both, he admitted. I protect you because I care, because I need you. And yes, I protect myself because losing you, losing this bond, it would destroy me. The honesty in his voice, the raw vulnerability, struck me deeper than any predator's attack ever could. My chest ached, torn between the need to step away and the magnetic pull that had bound us since the beginning. I started, then faltered, unsure how to express the storm raging within me. The bond flared, warm and insistent, and I felt his heartbeat mirroring mine. Our emotions tangled in a dangerous, irresistible web. Kale reached out slowly, cautiously, as if afraid I would reject him. His hand hovered near mine, and the slightest brush of his fingers sent a shiver through me, igniting a spark I had thought extinguished. Trust is fragile, he said softly, voice almost breaking. I know I've fractured it, but the bond, it's real, Alara, and it can heal if we choose to try. Together, I swallowed, the weight of fear and longing coiling inside me. I wanted to step into his embrace, to surrender to the pull that had driven me wild for weeks. But the shadow of doubt still lingered. Finally, I took a deep breath, letting the bond guide me even as my heart protested. Kale, I don't know if I can trust you fully. Not yet, but I can try. If you're willing to do the same. His eyes softened, relief and gratitude flickering like firelight. I will, he vowed, voice low and certain. I will prove it to you every day, every moment. I swear it. I nodded, allowing myself to step closer, the tension between us both explosive and tentative. The danger around us hadn't vanished. The predators, the hunters, the shadows, they still lurked in the forest. But in that instant, for a fragile moment, the world narrowed to just the two of us. Kale lowered his head slightly, resting his forehead against mine. We'll face it all, he whispered. Together. No more secrets. No more lies. We make our own path, bonded no matter what. I closed my eyes, letting the warmth of his presence, the undeniable pull, wash over me. Together, I echoed, sealing the vow silently, knowing that this pact was fragile but real, forged in shadows, blood, and bond. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying a faint rustle that reminded me of the danger still surrounding us. But for the first time in weeks, I felt anchored, tethered, and not alone. The spark of hope I had clung to in the abyss now had a shape. Kale, standing before me, scarred and wary, yet unwavering. And I knew, with certainty, that whatever came next, whatever dangers or secrets waited, we would face it together for the first time. The shadows didn't feel quite so dark. The forest was eerily silent. But every instinct told me that silence was deceptive. The predators that had haunted us were no longer scattered. They had united, shadows merging into a singular force of menace. I could feel it in my bones. Something ancient, cunning, and relentless was moving toward us. Kale's presence beside me was both reassuring and electrifying. The bond between us throbbed with urgency, pulling me toward him even as my mind raced with dread. He had warned me that the final threat would be unlike anything we had, faced smarter, faster, more ruthless, and I was beginning to understand why. They've been waiting, Kale murmured, voice low, almost a growl. They've been watching, learning, and now it's time for the hunt to end. I swallowed hard, heart pounding. The ultimate hunter, I asked, fear lacing my words. Kale's silver eyes flickered with something I couldn't read. Fear, anger, determination. Yes, the one who orchestrated everything. The one who sees us as pawns in a game we didn't agree to play. They won't stop until one of us is broken. Or dead. Every shadow felt like a threat, every rustle of leaves a warning. My wolf growled beneath my skin, restless and alert, sensing danger beyond the edge of my human comprehension. The forest itself seemed to pulse with malice. A predator alive in the shadows, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Kale. I hesitated, realizing that fear was no longer enough to stop me. The bond throbbed insistently, reminding me that we were stronger together. That destiny had tied us to each other and to this trial for a reason. He placed a firm hand on my shoulder, grounding me. "You're ready, Alara," he said softly. "Ready to face what's coming. Trust the bond. Trust yourself. Trust me." I nodded, though doubt still lingered. The love I felt for him, the trust we were rebuilding, the destiny that seemed to bind us everything was about to be tested in ways I could not yet imagine. The wind shifted, carrying with it a scent that made my stomach twist. Familiar, predatory, impossible to ignore. The ultimate hunter had arrived, and I could feel their presence weaving through the forest like a shadowed thread, connecting every rustle, every movement, every whisper of danger. "Here," Kale whispered, crouching low, eyes scanning the tree line. "This is where it begins. Stay close." We moved silently, shadows within shadows, heartbeats synchronized, senses straining. The air grew thicker, charged with an invisible electricity that set my nerves on edge. My wolf growled, restless, anticipating the confrontation, anticipating the trial that awaited us. A rustle to our right made us both freeze. Red eyes glimmered through the darkness. And I realized with sudden clarity that the hunters we had faced before were mere pawns. The ultimate enemy, the one who had orchestrated their attacks, who had driven us into chaos, was here, watching, waiting, controlling. And then the forest seemed to shift. Trees twisted in impossible angles, shadows stretching unnaturally, as though the enemy was bending the world itself to their will. My stomach dropped, fear and awe colliding. Kale's grip tightened on my hand, anchoring me. "They'll test everything: our bond, our loyalty, our love. Every choice you make will be measured against their designs." I swallowed, forcing courage into my trembling limbs. "Then we fight." Together. His eyes softened, a fleeting moment of vulnerability breaking through the storm of tension. "Together," he echoed, sealing the promise between us. A sudden movement, a blur of shadows, darted across the clearing ahead. The ultimate hunter revealed themselves for the first time. Their form was both beautiful and terrifying. A predator cloaked in darkness, eyes glowing like molten amber. Aura pulsing with power and malice. My heart lurched, but I refused to step back. The bond flared violently, Kale's heartbeat matching mine. And I realized in that moment that fear would not drive me away from him. Not now, not ever. The enemy spoke, voice low and melodic, echoing in the trees. "So you have survived. The bond persists. The little human thinks they are ready, but readiness is an illusion." Kale stepped forward, silver eyes blazing. "We are ready," he said fiercely. "No more games. No more hunting. Face us or leave, but do not underestimate what we are capable of together." The figure laughed softly, the sound sending shivers down my spine. "Together. A fragile bond cannot stand against destiny itself. One of you will fall tonight. One will be broken, and the other will live to regret it." I felt my chest tighten, the weight of those words sinking deep. The forest seemed to pulse with anticipation, the shadows coiling like snakes, ready to strike. My wolf growled, desperate and protective, sensing danger that my human mind could barely comprehend. Kale placed a hand on my cheek, grounding me. "No matter what happens," he whispered, voice fierce, "we face it side by side. Every trial, every shadow, every danger. We do not falter. We do not break. We survive together, I nodded, heart pounding, tears threatening to spill. Together, I repeated, sealing the vow once more. The ultimate hunter stepped forward. Every movement deliberate, calculating, terrifying. The final hunt had begun, and I knew, with icy certainty, that nothing, no force, no shadow, no predator would stop what was coming next. I inhaled deeply, tightening my grip on Cale's hand, letting the bond ground me, steady me, and fuel me. The trial awaited. The ultimate confrontation, and I would walk into it unflinching, bonded, and ready to face destiny itself. The clearing was a storm of shadow and silver light. The moon overhead casting fractured patterns on the forest floor as if the world itself were holding its breath. Every sound, the snap of a branch, the hiss of wind, code like a warning. My chest ached, not just from the exertion of the hunt, but from the tension that coiled in every fiber of my being. Cale stood beside me, his presence grounding me even as fear gripped my heart. The ultimate hunter was waiting. A figure both magnificent and terrifying, every movement precise, deliberate, radiating a power that made the shadows tremble. Their amber eyes glowed with a cold, calculating light, and I knew, with a sinking certainty, that they would not relent. "This ends tonight," Cale whispered, voice low, a growl threading through it. His hand found mine, gripping tightly. The bond pulsed between us, strong, fierce, unbroken even after everything we had endured. I nodded, feeling the surge of determination rise within me. "Together," I said, reaffirming the vow we had made in the shadows. The ultimate hunter laughed softly, a sound like steel slicing through silk. "Together. You are naive, bonded fools. Only one will leave this place with their fate intact." The battle erupted suddenly like a storm breaking over the forest. Shadows moved, twisting unnaturally as the hunter unleashed a torrent of attacks, both physical and supernatural. I barely had time to react, leaping behind Cale as the first strike tore through the clearing. "Stay close," he shouted, deflecting another blow with inhuman speed. I could feel the bond thrumming violently, warning me, guiding me, keeping me alive. My wolf surged beneath my skin, instincts taking over, weaving with my human decisions in a deadly dance of survival. The hunter's power was overwhelming, force of nature I had never faced. Cale's strikes were precise, lethal, but even he faltered under the intensity. I realized with a cold clarity that this wasn't just a battle of strength, it was a test of heart, of loyalty, of our bond itself. A sudden lunge toward me snapped my attention back. I rolled aside instinctively, feeling the surge of adrenaline and fear coursing through my veins. The hunter's claws grazed my shoulder, a searing reminder of the stakes. I hissed in pain, but I did not falter. The bond surged, and I felt Cale's presence, a tether to my courage, anchoring me. "Now, Ilara," Cale shouted, eyes blazing. "We do this together." I inhaled sharply, focusing every ounce of courage. I could feel the bond guiding me, telling me where to strike, when to move, when to protect. Together, we lunged, weaving around the hunter's attacks. Our movements synchronized in a rhythm that felt preordained, almost inevitable. But then everything shifted. The hunter's eyes glowed brighter, a wave of power radiating outward, knocking me off my feet. Pain exploded in my chest, fear clawing at my mind. Cale roared, moving to shield me, but the force was too strong, even for him. Shadows pressed against us, coiling, twisting, threatening to consume everything. I realized the truth in that moment. This was more than a battle. This was a test of sacrifice. Someone had to make the ultimate choice. "Cale," I began, panic rising, but he shook his head. "No, we are bound. We face this together. Trust me." But the bond pulsed violently, almost pleading with me, urging me toward a decision that I could not yet see fully. Then it became clear. If we were to survive, one of us had to risk everything to give a piece of themselves, to turn the tide. "Go," Cale shouted suddenly, eyes locked on mine. "I'll hold them. You'll find a way to end this. No, I screamed, but the force of the hunter's power pressed in, and instinct overrode desire. I saw a narrow path, faintly glowing, leading behind the hunter a weak point. A chance. I lunged, heart hammering, adrenaline screaming, the bond pulsing like wildfire. Kale's presence surged behind me, a tether of strength, but I could feel the strain on him, the toll he bore to give me this chance. Pain flared in my chest, in my limbs, but I pushed forward, focusing on the pendant the mysterious figure had given me. The symbol glowed faintly, resonating with the hunter's energy. A key I had only just begun to understand. With a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, I struck. The pendant released a pulse of light, a force that struck the hunter squarely. They staggered, claws faltering, amber eyes widening in shock. Kale roared behind me, striking with lethal precision, forcing the hunter backward. The combination, the bond, the pendant, our synchronized attacks shattered their control. For the first time, I saw fear in their eyes. But victory demanded a choice. The hunter surged one last time, directing a deadly strike toward Kale, without thinking. I stepped into the path, the bond flaring violently as if holding me in place. Pain exploded as the force struck me, yet the predator faltered, disoriented by the bond's intensity. Kale seized the moment, ending the fight in a final. Decisive strike, I fell to my knees, chest burning, vision blurred. But Kale's arms were around me instantly, grounding me, shielding me from the lingering shadows. We had won, but the cost was written into my very soul. I gasped, trying to breathe, heart hammering, adrenaline slowly ebbing. Kale held me tightly, eyes searching mine, silver fire softening with relief. Pride and something deeper unspoken. "You're alive," he whispered, voice trembling. You survived." "We survived." I nodded weakly, chest heaving. "We did it together," I managed, tears pricking at my eyes. The bond still pulsed, tethering us, reminding me that even in the aftermath of despair, even at the edge of fate, we had endured. Around us, the forest settled. Shadows retreating, the echoes of battle fading. The ultimate hunter was gone, defeated, and the path ahead, though still uncertain, had been carved by our courage, our bond, and our choices. I lifted my head, meeting Kale's gaze. Scarred, weary, but unbroken. We made it," I whispered, voice shaky but resolute. He nodded, brushing a hand across my cheek, tender, grounding. "Yes, and we'll face whatever comes next." Together, for the first time since the chaos began, I allowed myself to believe. The bond, our love, our destiny, they had endured. And though the trial had tested everything, we had emerged stronger, scarred, and transformed. We were still standing. And for now, that was enough. The forest had quieted, though the air still carried the memory of what had transpired. The battle was over, but its echoes remained whispers of shadows. Faint scorch marks on the ground, the lingering tension of lives nearly lost. I walked slowly among the ancient trees, Kale's hand tight in mine. Feeling the bond pulse gently, a steady rhythm that grounded me. Everything had changed. The fear that had haunted me, the shadows that had stalked me. The questions I had carried about trust, loyalty, and destiny, all of it had been forged into something stronger. Scarred, yes, but unbroken. And I realized with a clarity that both thrilled and terrified me, that we were no longer the same people who had fled into the abyss just nights ago. Kale's gaze met mine. Silver eyes, soft but still fierce, still protective. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly, as though afraid my body or soul might crumble under the weight of what we had endured. I nodded, though my voice caught when I tried to speak. "I think I am. More than I thought possible. After everything, we survived." He pulled me close, and I rested my head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath my cheek. The bond hummed, a tether stronger than words, a rhythm that had carried us through chaos and fear and despair. It had brought us to this moment, scarred, weary, but alive. do you think? It's truly over, I asked, glancing around the forest. The shadows, the hunters, the predator that orchestrated it all. Kale exhaled slowly, his breath warm against my hair. Some threats may always linger, he admitted, but we faced what was strongest. The rest is only noise. His fingers brushed my hair back, tender and grounding. What matters is that we endured together. I let out a long, shuddering breath. The bond throbbed gently, almost tender now, a living reminder of what had been forged in fire and darkness. I had gained so much courage, clarity, the knowledge that my fears could be faced, and yet the loss was undeniable. I thought of the predator we had defeated, the near sacrifices, the moments of doubt and separation, and I realized that pain and love were intertwined, inseparable, shaping the very essence of who we had become. Kale, I whispered, lifting my gaze to him. I never thought I'd make it through, or that we would, but I feel changed, stronger, and closer to you than ever. He smiled softly, a mixture of pride, relief, and something almost tender that made my chest ache. I felt it too, he said. The bond. It's no longer just connection. It's part of me, part of you, and it will endure no matter what. We walked slowly through the forest, step by step, hand in hand, letting the night absorb the remnants of the chaos. Every shadow, every rustle of leaves, now seemed calm, even protective. The predators were gone, the ultimate hunter defeated, and the bond between us had solidified into something unshakably a tether that transcended fear, secrecy, and even time itself. I reflected on what had been lost. Moments of innocence, the certainty of safety, trust that had been fractured and rebuilt, of it shaped who I was now. And yet, in the midst of loss, there was gain. Courage I had never known. Love I had almost denied. A bond that had been tested in the abyss and emerged eternal. Kale stopped at the edge of a small clearing, moonlight bathing the space in silver. He turned to me, eyes solemn. Whatever comes next, Elara, we face it together. No shadows, no secrets, no fear. Just us and the bond we've earned. I nodded, tears brimming despite my exhaustion. Together, I echoed. The word carried more weight now than it ever had. Proof of survival. Proof of love, proof of destiny fulfilled. We knelt together at the edge of a stream, the water reflecting the moon and stars above. I dipped my fingers into the cool current, letting the ripple carry away the remnants of fear, doubt, and despair. Kale mirrored me, his hand brushing mine in the water, the bond between us resonating like a silent promise. Do you ever wonder, I asked quietly, voice barely above the whisper of leaves, what would have happened if we had faltered? Kale's gaze softened, thoughtful, haunted even. I do, he admitted. But the bond, it brought us back. It gave us courage when we had none. And it reminded me that even at the edge of destiny, we can choose. We can fight. We can endure. And we can love. I leaned my head against him again, letting the quiet of the night wrap around us. The forest, the shadows, the lingering echoes of battle, they all seemed to fade into insignificance in the presence of what we had forged. A connection unbreakable. A love proven in fire and darkness. As we rose to leave the clearing, the wind shifted, carrying with it a faint whisper, almost like a song. It spoke of trials yet to come, of moments that would test us again, of shadows that might return. But it also carried warmth, a reminder that we were not alone, that the bond between us was eternal, unyielding, and transcendent. I squeezed Kale's hand, feeling the pulse of his heartbeat through our tether, and I truly knew that nothing could sever what we shared. Not distance, not danger, not fear. The trials had ended, but the echoes of what we had survived would linger forever, a testament to love, courage, and the enduring power of the bond we had chosen to honor. For the first time since the darkness had descended, I allowed myself to truly breathe. The past, with all its shadows and pain, had shaped us. The present, with its quiet hope and tender certainty, embraced us. And the future, though unknown, felt like a promise. waiting to be written in the echoes of our bond. I glanced up at Kale, silver eyes meeting mine in a gaze that carried everything words could not. "We've come through the abyss," I said softly, "and we will face whatever comes next," he replied, voice low and certain, a vow that lingered in the air like an eternal echo. The forest was still. The moonlight gentle shadows softened. And in that stillness, in that quiet triumph, I understood something profound. We had been broken, tested, and transformed, and in that transformation, we had found not just survival, but something far greater, a bond eternal, a love unyielding, and a destiny finally claimed. Voices hushed when I entered a room. Wolves exchanged glances when I passed. The children's laughter seemed subdued, their games watched carefully by mothers who kept them close. Even the forest grew restless. Birds startled easily, and once, while carrying water, I swore I saw eyes glinting in the brush gone before I could be sure. By the third night, I couldn't stand it anymore. I wrapped a cloak around my shoulders and walked to the riverbank, hoping the cold air would clear my thoughts. But instead, the stillness pressed heavier. The moon hung swollen, casting pale light across the rippling water. And then I heard it, a whisper. My name, Ilara. The sound drifted like smoke, too soft to pinpoint, too heavy to dismiss. I spun, my breath catching, scanning the trees. Nothing. Only shadows stretching long and silent. But I wasn't alone. I knew it in my bones. Someone watched. Someone lingered just out of sight. My pulse hammered as I took a step back, the earth damp beneath my feet. Another whisper curled from the darkness, this one lower, rougher. "Forgive me," the same words. The same voice, only this time. The shadows stirred in answer, branches rustling, though no wind touched them, the air thickening with unseen weight. I clutched my cloak tighter, my heart pounding as a truth settled over me like frost. Something was wrong. Something was unraveling. And whatever it was, it had only just begun. The days bled into one another, but the unease only sharpened. It was in the way the forest seemed to breathe against the edges of our lives, in the way the air grew heavy before dusk, in the way even the most confident warriors walked faster once the sun sank. It was in me too. I tried to tell myself that nothing had changed, that I was simply seeing shadows where there were none. But that excuse faltered the morning I found the first mark. I had gone to gather herbs near the southern border, a stretch of forest few visited unless they had to. The trees there grew thick and old, their trunks warped with age, their roots clawing over stone like grasping hands. The air smelled damp, heavy with moss, and then I saw it. Carved into the bark of an oak was a symbol sharp, deliberate, nothing like the idle scratches left by claws. It was a circle, broken clean down the middle, with lines radiating outward like shattered glass. I froze, staring at it, my heart thudding in my throat. It wasn't a symbol I recognized. Not of our pack, not of any pack I had ever heard of. And yet, something about it made my skin prickle. A warning, a boundary, a curse. I wanted to turn away, to pretend I hadn't seen it. But before I could, the wind shifted, and I caught it again, that scent. Wild, familiar. Kale, I spun, scanning the trees. "Hello?" My voice cracked against the silence. "Who's there?" Nothing. Only the creak of branches swaying, the faint trickle of water deeper in the woods. Still. I knew I wasn't alone. I left the herbs behind. My basket clutched tight against my chest as I hurried back to the pack house. But the symbol followed me in my mind, burned into the back of my eyelids. And that night, the whispers began. It wasn't unusual for the women to murmur among themselves while working. But I couldn't ignore the way their voices dropped when I entered a room. I caught fragments. Words that chilled me. Marked, "Not safe." Alpha S curse. I wanted to demand answers, to force the truth from their lips, but the fear in their eyes stopped me. They looked at me the way they might look at a storm cloud forming overhead, able to stop it. Bracing for the inevitable, it was worse with the elders. One afternoon, as I carried bread to the training field, Elder Thorne stopped me with a hand on my wrist. His eyes, clouded with age but sharp with memory, searched mine as if I were some puzzle he almost recognized. "You've felt it, haven't you?" he asked, voice low, nearly lost beneath the chatter around us. My throat tightened. Felt what? The pull, the shadow, the curse of being chosen. The breadbasket nearly slipped from my hands. "I don't know what you mean." But he only shook his head, sorrow etching deep lines into his face. "Be careful, girl. The bond gives, but it also takes. And sometimes the goddess chooses cruelly." He let go of me, and before I could gather the courage to ask more, he turned away, leaning heavily on his cane. His words sank like stones into me. Chosen, curse, cruelty. By the time the sun fell, unease gnawed at me like a persistent ache. That night, as I sat in my small room, I tried to distract myself with weaving, but the thread tangled in my trembling fingers. My wolf paced restlessly beneath my skin. Ears pricked to sounds I couldn't quite place. Then came the scratching dot. It was faint at first, almost like the scrape of a branch against the outer wall. I held my breath, waiting, listening. The sound came again, deliberate, too steady to be chance. Heart hammering, I moved toward the window. Moonlight poured across the floorboards, pale and sharp, and there on the sill lay a scrap of parchment. I stared, frozen. I hadn't heard anyone approach. The window had been latched, and yet there it was, an object left where it could not have been placed naturally. My fingers shook as I unfolded it. The message was short, the letters jagged as though written in haste. "Leave before it's too late." My mouth went dry. I glanced out the window, but only darkness met me. No footsteps, no figure retreating, just silence. The parchment crumpled in my grip as fear and fury tangled in my chest. Who would send this? Why warn me? And why now, when my every step already felt weighted by unseen eyes? Sleep was impossible. I lay awake, listening to every creak of wood, every whisper of wind. And when exhaustion finally pulled me under, the dream returned. Kale again. But this time he wasn't silent, Alara. He rasped, his voice broken, desperate. "Stay away from me." I reached for him, my throat raw. "You're my mate." His eyes blazed with anguish. "And that's why you'll suffer." I jolted awake with a gasp, tears burning hot against my cheeks. The parchment still lay beside me, the words etched into my soul like a wound. "Leave before it's too late." And for the first time, I wondered if they were right. The note never left my thoughts. Every time I reached for water, every time I glanced toward the woods, I felt it pressing against my chest like a weight. "Leave before it's too late." But how could I? The pack was my life, my family, my duty. And more than that, something in me whispered that leaving now would only tighten the noose around my neck. The danger wasn't out there, it was tied to me, pulling me deeper with every passing day. That evening the pack gathered in the clearing for training. Warriors sparred beneath the fading light, their movements sharp and precise. I sat near the edge, pretending to focus on mending a tunic torn in yesterday's skirmish. But my gaze drifted, restless, searching the shadows that stretched long beneath the trees. The feeling returned, the weight of unseen eyes. At first I thought it was my imagination again. But when the wind shifted, the scent hit me wild, intoxicating, so achingly familiar. My breath caught, my fingers going still against the fabric in my lap. I knew that scent. The air thickened, pressing against my skin. My wolf stirred restlessly inside me, ears pricked, heart racing. I looked toward the tree line. And that's when I saw him. A figure stood half hidden in the shadows, tall, broad, his presence filled the clearing, even though no one else seemed to notice him. The world muted around me, the sparring shouts fading to a distant hum. All that existed was the figure in the trees, silent, still, watching. The sunlight caught him for only a heartbeat, glinting off the sharp line of his jaw, the glimmer of eyes that burned like storm clouds. But before I could draw breath, he stepped back into shadow, vanishing as though the forest itself swallowed him. My heart slammed against my ribs. My fingers trembled so violently the needle slipped, pricking my skin. A drop of blood welled, but I barely felt it. Had anyone else seen him? I scanned the clearing, but the others continued as if nothing were amiss. Warriors lunged and parried, children ran after each other at the far end. Mothers clapped and called for order. No one looked toward the trees. No one smelled the wildness that clung to the air. Only me. I pressed a cloth to the small cut on my finger, trying to steady my breath. But it was useless. The pull inside me thrummed, insistent, magnetic. It was the same tether from the dreams, the same voice that haunted my nights. I rose without thinking, feet carrying me toward the tree line. The fabric slipped from my lap, forgotten. The moment my boots touched the moss beyond the clearing, the world shifted. The air grew colder, sharper. The forest pressed close around me, branches arching overhead like a cathedral roof. Every sound was magnified. The snap of twigs, the whisper of leaves, the thunder of my heartbeat. "Hello." My voice broke against the silence. No answer, but I felt him. Closer now. The bond inside me pulled taut, as if I were a puppet and he the unseen hand. My wolf wind, torn between fear and a yearning so deep it threatened to split me open. "Who are you?" I tried again, my throat dry. "Why are you following me?" Still silence. And then movement. To my left. A shadow slid between the trees. Too fast, too smooth to be anything but a wolf or something far older. My breath hitched. I turned, eyes straining against the dim light. For a moment I saw him clearly, not his face, not fully, but the outline of his form, tall and unyielding. The curve of his shoulders beneath a dark cloak. The way the light caught in his eyes, silver and sharp, pinning me in place, our gazes locked and my world tilted. The bond flared so violently it stole my breath. My knees weakened, my chest ached, my pulse hammered like a war drum. Every instinct screamed at me to run, yet every fiber of my being screamed louder, closer. I staggered a step forward, my lips parting as if to speak his name, even though I had never said it aloud in this context, Cale. But the moment shattered. A branch snapped deeper in the forest. His head turned sharply, his body tensing. And then, with a speed that made my eyes blur, he was gone, vanished into the trees like a shadow dissolved by dawn. I stood frozen, my breath ragged, my skin damp with sweat despite the chill. The forest was silent again, as if nothing had happened. But I knew he had been there, and Wersai knew he would be back. I stumbled out of the woods, my cloak snagging on branches, my pulse still wild. By the time I reached the clearing again, the pack was dispersing, their chatter loud, ordinary, unbroken. No one looked at me. No one smelled the wildness still clinging to my skin. I told myself to forget, to bury it, to ignore the way my soul screamed for him, even as my mind warned me away. But when I closed my eyes that night, all I saw was the glimmer of his gaze in the shadows. And all I felt was the ache of a bond that refused to let me go. Curiosity gnawed at me, sharper than fear. Who was he, truly? Why hide? Why whisper? Why haunt the edges of my world? And why did every part of me already know the answer? The night was too still. I told myself I wasn't going back to the woods. That after what I'd seen the day before, the only sane choice was to stay near the safety of the pack. To drown the memory in routine, in chores, in anything that could make my mind stop circling around the same unbearable truth. He was real, but as the moon climbed higher, silver light spilling across my room, I found myself restless. My body would not settle, my wolf pacing inside me, ears pricked, waiting. The tether pulled, invisible but undeniable, dragging me toward the trees like a tide I could not resist. I gave in. The forest greeted me with silence, its shadows deeper under the full moon. The air was cool, scented with pine and earth. I walked slowly, every sense alert, every step echoing with a question I couldn't silence. Would he come? A branch snapped. I spun, heart hammering, and there he was, not half hidden this time, not just a fleeting outline. He stepped from the shadows as if they parted for him, his movements fluid, his presence overwhelming. The moonlight revealed more than I was ready for. Tall, broad-shouldered, every line of his frame sharp with restrained strength. His hair was dark, his eyes. His eyes. Silver, fierce, storm-bright. Holding mine as if they had been waiting for centuries to find me. I froze, rooted to the ground. "Why are you here?" My voice came out small, caught between fear and something far more dangerous. He tilted his head slightly, studying me. His lips curved, though it wasn't quite a smile. "Because you are." The words sank into me, heavy, inevitable. My breath hitched. "I don't know you," I whispered. "You will." His voice was low. Velvet wrapped around steel, carrying a weight I couldn't name. My wolf pushed against my skin, aching to be closer. But my mind screamed warnings. Danger, forbidden, unknown. I forced my legs to hold still. "Why were you watching me?" I demanded, though my voice wavered. "What do you want?" He stepped closer, and the air seemed to shift with him. My pulse stumbled, my body tense with the instinct to flee, and yet not a single part of me moved. "I wanted to be sure," he said softly. His eyes burned brighter. "And now I am." I swallowed hard. "Sure of what?" "That the bond is real." The word bond echoed inside me like thunder. My knees weakened, my breath shallow. I had felt it, yes, every look, every whisper in the dark, every unspoken pull inside my chest. But to hear him say it out loud was like stepping off a cliff. "I don't." My throat tightened. "That's not possible." He took another step closer, close enough that I could see the faint scar cutting through his brow. The way his jaw clenched, as though he fought against something fierce inside him. "It is," he said, and the certainty in his tone made the ground beneath me feel unsteady. "You feel it. Don't deny it." I opened my mouth to protest, but the words died. Because he was right. I did feel it burning through me, tying me to him with invisible threads that tightened every time our eyes met. "I don't even know your name," I whispered. His gaze softened, just slightly. "Kale," the name struck something deep inside me. Kale, it fit, sharp and powerful, the kind of name you couldn't forget even if you tried. "Elara," I said, though he hadn't asked. Somehow I needed him to know it. "Elara," he repeated. And the way my name sounded on his tongue sent a shiver racing down my spine. For a long moment, silence stretched between us, filled with everything we couldn't say. His eyes lingered on me, hungry yet restrained. It's as if he wanted to step closer, but held himself back with iron will. Finally, I tore my gaze away, desperate for air. This can't happen," I said, though even to my own ears it sounded weak. Kale's jaw tightened. "You don't understand yet. But you will. The bond doesn't ask permission. It simply is." His words struck me like a warning and a promise all at once. My chest ached with a longing I couldn't name, and yet my skin crawled with fear. Who was he to speak of bonds, to step into my world and twist everything I thought I knew? I took a shaky step back, breaking the spell just enough to breathe. His eyes darkened, but he didn't move toward me again. "You should leave," I said. Though the words hurt more than they should have. "If anyone sees you," his lips curved again, this time with something closer to sorrow. "They won't. I know how to stay hidden." And just like that, the shadows stirred, wrapping around him like a cloak. I blinked, and he was gone. The forest was silent again. But I wasn't the same. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to calm the storm raging inside me. My heart was still racing, my skin still tingling from the weight of his gaze. I wanted to deny it, to pretend none of it had happened. But the truth was impossible to escape. He was real. The bond was real, and worse than fear, worse than confusion, was the truth I couldn't shake. I wanted to see him again. Morning came too quickly. I had barely slept, my dreams haunted by Kale's silver eyes, the pull of the bond still thrumming like a pulse beneath my ribs. Every shadow in my room seemed sharper, more deliberate. As if the forest had followed me into the pack house, I told myself it was only the aftermath of the encounter, a trick of adrenaline and imagination. But the moment I stepped outside, the world whispered otherwise. The first hint came with the water. I carried a pail from the well, feet crunching on frostbitten leaves. The pail felt unnaturally heavy, though it was only half full. My arms strained, my breath came in sharp bursts. When I reached the kitchen to pour it out, the water had turned gray, swirling with streaks of silver that shimmered even in the weak morning light. I froze, fingers tightening around the wooden handle. A faint reflection on the surface caught my eye, and for a heartbeat, I thought I saw him there. Cale's silhouette, silver eyes staring from the liquid before it faded to plain water. I blinked, and it was gone. The day worsened as I moved through the pack house. Helping with repairs and errands, small accidents began to follow me. A stack of firewood toppled for no reason. A tool slid off the bench, narrowly missing my foot. Pups tripped over nothing, and even the animals seemed unsettled horses stamping nervously. A raven flapping at my shoulder before it darted away into the trees. I tried to laugh it off, telling myself it was coincidence. But deep down, I knew the truth. Something was stirring. Something beyond the ordinary, reaching into our world, threading itself into my life. And then the dreams returned. Each night, Cale was there, sometimes distant, watching from the shadows. Sometimes close, the bond flaring so violently that I woke trembling, drenched in sweat. One night I dreamed the pack house itself burned, flames licking the walls, the scent of smoke clinging to my hair. And through it Cale appeared, pulling me toward him, warning me, yet keeping just out of reach. I woke screaming once, only to find the fireplace cold and the floor untouched. But the ash scattered in strange patterns, as if someone or something had been trying to send a message. By the third day, I could no longer ignore it. The pull of the bond was a constant hum, present in every glance at the trees, every ripple in the water, every sudden shiver down my spine. It wasn't just Cale, it was the supernatural stirring in our world, moving through shadows, threading into ordinary life, breaking the barrier between normal and impossible. Even the pack noticed. Marin cornered me in the garden one afternoon, her hands trembling around the basket she carried. "You feel it too," she said, eyes darting to the forest. "Don't deny it. The air has changed. The trees. The wolves. Something walks unseen, and it's drawn to you." I shook my head. "I don't understand. It's just dreams. Shadows." She laughed bitterly. "Dreams? Oh, girl, you don't understand yet. What comes for you is neither dream nor shadow. It is real, and it is close." Her words lingered as I went about my chores, but I tried to focus. Watering the herbs, sweeping the floor, tending the younger wolves, I tried to anchor myself in routine. Yet the world had already shifted. Every movement, every glance carried a question. Could not answer. And then danger arrived. It was late afternoon when I was fetching firewood at the edge of the clearing. The sun dipped low, shadows stretching long and deep. I heard the snap first a twig breaking under a weight too heavy for a deer. Then the rustle of leaves, soft, deliberate. My pulse quickened. "Hello?" I called, trying to sound braver than I felt. "Who's there?" No answer. Then movement fast, a blur among the trees. My heart skipped. The pull inside me flared so sharply it stole my breath. My wolf growled, low and warning. I spun to retreat, but the ground beneath my foot shifted a hidden root. A snagged branch, and I fell hard, scraping my hands and knees against rough bark. I gasped, struggling to rise, my heart hammering in my ears. And that's when I felt it, the presence, not the scent I recognized. Not the pull that had drawn me before, but something darker, closer, predatory. A shadow leaning from the edge of the forest, moving with intent. I couldn't see clearly, only that it was large, watching, circling dot. My breath came fast. My wolf urged flight. I scrambled backward, twisting to escape the clearing. And then the snap of a branch too close. The rush of air against my cheek. Something moved past me fast, dangerous. Impossible to stop, and disappeared into the trees. I collapsed to the ground, trembling, tears stinging my eyes. My chest ached with the adrenaline, the terror, and the undeniable truth. The world I had known was gone. The ordinary life of the pack was fragile, already breached. And the supernatural was no longer whispering. It was here. It had touched me. I didn't know if it was Kayla or something else entirely, but I could no longer deny it. My life had collided with a world I could not control, and I was caught in the middle by the time I dragged myself back to the pack house. The sky was bleeding red with the last light of dusk. My hands were scraped, my cloak torn, my heart still racing. I avoided the eyes of anyone I passed, fearful they could see the truth, the bond, the pull, the danger I could feel but could not name. And as I lay in my bed that night, every muscle still taut, I realized something terrifying. This was only the beginning. The shadows were stirring. The bond was real. And whatever had followed me into the woods would not leave easily. A low wind whispered outside my window, curling the curtains like ghostly fingers. And then, almost as if it were laughing at my fear, I heard a faint rustle, soft, deliberate. Waiting. I pressed my hands to my chest. My wolf growled inside me. I was not safe. And I would soon learn just how close danger could come. I didn't sleep that night. The shadows outside my window whispered in ways I couldn't ignore. Every flicker of moonlight, every rustle of leaves, reminded me that the world had changed my world. My body, my heart. When the sun rose, I moved mechanically through morning tasks. But my mind was elsewhere, pulled toward the forest where I had glimpsed him, Cale. His presence lingered like smoke, impossible to ignore, and the memory of his gaze sent shivers down my spine. By midday, I could no longer resist. I wrapped my cloak tightly around me, trying to hide the rapid thrum of my heartbeat, and ventured toward the clearing. The forest seemed almost to wait for me, the air thick and expectant. I didn't have to call his name. "You came," his voice said softly from the shadows. I froze. The sound of it, low, warm, carrying both command and longing, made my chest ache. I stepped closer, unsure whether I was drawn by fear or something far more dangerous. Cale emerged into the light, his form solid and undeniable now. The shadows clung to him like a second skin, making him seem larger than life. Yet in his eyes, I saw something familiar, a vulnerability he tried to hide from the world. "Why are you here?" I asked, though the words trembled. "To make sure you understand," he replied, taking a slow step toward me. "To show you what binds us. What cannot be ignored." The wind stirred, lifting stray strands of my hair, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the two of us. I could see the faint rise and fall of his chest, the careful control in his stance, and the pull between us magnetic, insistent, impossible. "I don't understand," I whispered. "I barely know you." He smiled, faint but sharp, and reached out, not touching, only a few inches from my arm. "Yet you feel it. Every glance, every heartbeat, every breath. The bond doesn't wait for understanding." I swallowed hard. The sensation was undeniable, a thread of heat running along my veins, tugging me closer to him, filling me with a longing that both terrified and exhilarated me. "You're dangerous," I said, my voice almost a plea. "I shouldn't be here." Cale's eyes darkened, storm bright. "And yet you came. You cannot help yourself." "Neither can I." His words were both a warning and a confession, and I realized then how much I wanted to ignore it, to step forward, to let the pull take me, even if it meant falling into something I couldn't control. We walked together through the clearing. Words, awkward, small gestures, heavy with meaning. He taught me how to sense the subtle shifts in the forest, how to read the rustle of leaves, the smell of wind before it carried movement. He didn't touch me, yet every step we took together felt intimate. The silence between us charged with unspoken truths. At one point, he paused, watching me braid my hair with hands that trembled slightly, an uncharacteristic lapse in his usual control. "You're stronger than you know," he said softly. But the bond. It will test you in ways you cannot yet imagine. I looked at him, caught between fear and something far more thrilling. And you? I asked. What does it test in you? Cale's gaze faltered for the first time. His lips pressed into a thin line, and he glanced away. Everything, he admitted. My control, my patience. My heart. Every instinct in me wants to claim you, yet I cannot. And the knowledge of what I am, what I could bring into your life, it terrifies me. The words struck me like a blow. I had always suspected there was more to him than mere human strength or wolf blood. But now it was no longer suspicion. He carried something dangerous, something raw and powerful that could not be tamed. I trust you, I whispered, almost to myself. Even if I shouldn't. Cale's head lifted sharply, silver eyes locking with mine. You shouldn't, he said, voice rough with restraint. But the bond. It chooses its own path. We continued walking, the forest around us alive with movement. Birds scattered, the wind whispered secrets, and I could feel the pulse of something hidden beneath the surface of the world, and then it happened. A shadow broke from the trees, a massive shape, taller and broader than any wolf I had ever seen. Its eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight, red and predatory. Cale stiffened immediately, stepping in front of me. And for the first time, I saw the full truth of him. His form shimmered, not human, not fully wolf. Fur dark as midnight rippled along his limbs, his eyes now silver fire, claws glinting faintly. The power radiating from him was raw, terrifying, and awe-inspiring. I stumbled back, heart racing, breath caught in my throat. What are you? I whispered, horrified and entranced all at once. Cale's voice dropped low, almost reverent. I am what you feared and what you've been drawn to since the beginning. I am the Alpha, and so much more. The shadow that had broken from the trees paused, hissing, but it recoiled from him as if recognizing his dominance. Cale's presence alone held it at bay, and yet he did not approach me immediately. His gaze softened, silver fire dimming slightly, as if he were willing the danger away. Keeping it from me, I realized then that the bond was not just pull or desire, it was protection, tether, and warning all at once. And the depth of it terrified me more than the shadow ever could. Cale, I breathed, trembling. I don't know if I can. He held up a hand, a gentle barrier between us and the dark forest beyond. You will, he said quietly, and you will survive because the bond chose us both, even as I stood there. Shaken and wide-eyed, the truth settled in my bones. My life had irrevocably changed. I was drawn to him, bound to him. And yet the full measure of who he was and what danger he carried was only beginning to show. And the fear, the awe, and the undeniable longing all collided into one impossible thought. I was utterly, irrevocably drawn to him. The forest had never seemed so alive or so watchful after our encounter the night before. I could not shake the image of Cale's transformation, the fur dark as midnight. The silver fire in his eyes, the way the shadow recoiled, as though the forest itself recognized his dominance. Even now, hours later, the memory burned in my mind. I told myself it was too much, that no human should witness what I had seen. But the pull of the bond refused to be ignored. Even now I could feel it tugging at my chest, tying me to him with threads that were invisible but unbreakable. Yet today, the bond felt different, dangerous, unsteady. I had wandered near the edge of the river, hoping to calm my mind in the soft rush of water. The sun glinted on the surface, dancing across stones, and for a moment the world seemed almost normal, almost safe. Almost. Then I saw him. Cale stood across the riverbank, partially hidden by trees, watching me. His posture was calm, but the intensity in his eyes was enough to make my stomach twist. He beckoned me with the faintest tilt of his head. Hesitation clawed at me, but the bond pulled harder, insistent and unyielding. I stepped closer, every fiber of me aware of the forest around us. You shouldn't be here, he said, voice low and smooth. It's not safe. And yet I am, I replied, voice trembling, betraying the mix of fear and longing I felt. He exhaled slowly, like he was fighting an invisible weight. There are things about me. Things I cannot show you yet. Things that will frighten you. I shivered. Then why do you come to me at all? Cale's gaze softened, but only slightly. Because the bond demands it. Because you are mine as surely as I am yours. The words made my pulse stutter. Mine? Could something so deep and ancient choose me without my consent? Without my understanding? The thought should have terrified me, and it did, but so did the pull. So did the inexplicable thrill of being near him. Suddenly, a rustle in the underbrush caught our attention. Cale's head snapped toward it, movements fluid, controlled, predatory. He stepped closer to me, not touching, but creating a barrier between me and the unseen presence. And then, for a heartbeat, the forest seemed to bend around him. The shadows deepened unnaturally, a gust of wind lifting leaves into spirals that danced like fire. The water along the riverbank rippled as if stirred by some invisible force. I stumbled back, eyes wide. Cale, what is that? He paused, jaw tightening. His hands flexed, and the faint glint of claws just visible at the edges of his fingers sent a jolt of fear through me. I told you, you aren't ready for all of it. I saw it, I whispered, pointing at the rippling shadows. Your power. What you can do? Cale's gaze softened for just a moment, and a flicker of something vulnerable crossed his face. Power. Yes. But also burden. You don't know what it costs. What it takes. I wanted to step closer, to reach for him, but every instinct told me to pull away. The pull of the bond ward with the stark terror his presence inspired. He was irresistible and dangerous, thrilling and forbidden all at once. I could feel the subtle thrum of his heartbeat through the air. Through the bond, a constant reminder that we were tied together in ways I could neither understand nor resist. And yet, doubt crept in. How can I trust you? I asked softly, my voice breaking. I don't even know what you are, what you're capable of. You could hurt me without meaning to, or worse. Cale's eyes darkened, the silver fire dimming slightly. I know, he admitted. And that is why I try. Why I hold back? But the bond. I hesitated. It doesn't care about holding back, does it? He shook his head slowly. No, and neither do the instincts tied to it. You feel it pulling you to me, but the truth is, it can be dangerous for both of us. A cold wind swept across the riverbank, rustling leaves and carrying with it the scent of wet earth. For a moment I thought I saw a figure, a wolf-like silhouette watching us from the shadows, eyes glinting in the dying light. Cale stepped closer, blocking my view. His hand hovered near mine, just inches away, and I felt the bond flare violently. A pulse of warmth and heat that left me trembling. I wanted to touch him, to bridge the distance, but the instinct to flee was stronger. Something primal, warning me that the fragments I had glimpsed were only part of the truth. I need to know more, I said, voice tight. If we are bonded, then I need to understand you. Cale's jaw clenched, his eyes flickering with shadowed emotion. And you will, when the time is right. But there are forces at work, secrets buried in blood and shadow that you are not yet ready to face. I wanted to argue, to demand, to force the truth from him. But instead I swallowed hard, my wolf growling softly beneath my skin, sensing the tension in the air. The pull of the bond was strong, but so was the unease threading through it. The truth was fractured. I could feel the glimpses of his power, the pull of the bond, the intensity in his gaze, but I could not trust the whole picture. And that mistrust shadowed the connection like a storm on the horizon. Cale turned his gaze toward the forest, eyes narrowing. There are dangers coming, he warned, voice low. You must be careful. Not everyone or everything will wait for the bond to decide. I nodded, my chest tight. I wanted to cling to him, to step into the pull fully. But the fragments I had seen, the claws, the shadows, the power beyond human comprehension kept me trembling. For all the fascination, all the pull. I realized something terrifying. I didn't yet know whether I could trust him, and neither did I know if the bond would forgive me for my hesitation. Sleep did not come. Not really. Each night, I drifted into a haze between dreams and waking, where Cale's presence threaded through my thoughts like silver fire. I saw him in the shadows at the edge of my room, heard his voice carried on the wind, felt the pull of the bond tighten around my chest as if it were a physical tether. I tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself that it was only the bond, only the connection, only the lingering effect of the forest. The claws, the silver eyes. Tried to remind myself of the danger, the unknown. The fragments of truth I could not fully trust, and yet every time I closed my eyes, every time the moonlight spilled across my bed, I felt him. Not as a memory, not as a shadow, as if he were standing in the room, invisible but undeniable, waiting for me to acknowledge him. During the day, I threw myself into routine. I tended the younger wolves, mended torn garments, helped with the pack's chores. But everything felt smaller, duller, irrelevant. The pull tugged at me constantly, subtle yet insistent, threading my thoughts until I could think of nothing else. I caught myself staring toward the forest, imagining him between the shadows, waiting for me. A growl deep in my chest warned me, but I ignored it. I was a moth drawn to flame, my reason no match for the irresistible pull of him. One afternoon, I wandered to the river, hoping to find clarity in the cool water. I knelt at the bank, trailing my fingers through the current, letting the chill wash over me. And then I felt it's an impossibly light brush of wind, carrying the faint scent of pine and earth and something darker, older. Cale, I whispered, even as my heart hammered. The air shifted, the forest quieting around me. And there he was, standing across the riverbank, closer than I had ever dared approach, eyes locked on mine. My pulse raced as if my body recognized him before my mind could. I shouldn't, I began, but the words faltered. I know, he said softly, voice carrying across the water. But neither can you stay away. The truth in his voice made me shiver. He was right. Every fiber of me ached toward him, and every instinct screamed danger. I wanted to resist, to step back, to run. But the pull was too strong. I stepped forward, feet trembling on the mossy bank. Why? I asked, voice barely a whisper. Why do I feel this? This way. Cale's gaze softened, silver fire dimming as he stepped closer. Because the bond chose us, he said simply, and it does not respect your fear or mine. I wanted to look away, to focus on the flowing water, the trees, anything but him. But I couldn't, not when his presence made the air around me thrum. When the invisible tether between us tightened with each heartbeat. You're dangerous, I said again. Though my voice wavered, I don't know you. I don't know what you are capable of. He smiled faintly, almost ruefully. And yet you are here. You cannot stay away, no matter how much you try. I tried to step back, but my legs felt like lead. The water at my feet rippled as if responding to the bond, tiny waves tugging at my cloak. My wolf growled beneath my skin, uneasy and restless, sensing the tension that threatened to overwhelm me. I shouldn't want this, I whispered, though my body betrayed me. I could feel my pulse racing, my skin flush. The ache of desire that had nothing to do with understanding, everything to do with the pull of him. Cale took another step closer, and this time the air itself seemed to bend around him. I could see the faint glimmer of claws again, the ripple of dark fur at the edges of his shadow, the promise of power that both terrified and captivated me. I can't, I faltered. I can't let this happen. He reached out then, not touching. Not yet, but close enough that the space between us was electric. You already have, he said softly. The bond is stronger than choice, and it will not let you go. I trembled, torn between fear and fascination. Every instinct told me to flee. Every fiber of my being urged me to step toward him. The world around me blurred, the river, the trees, the fading sunlight, all reduced to the intensity of his presence, the pull of the bond, the ache in my chest that refused to be silenced. For a moment, I closed my eyes, letting myself imagine what it would be like to cross the distance, to let the pull take me fully, to touch him, to speak to him, to surrender to the invisible threads that bound us. And then I opened them. He was closer now, just across the narrow strip of water, his silver eyes holding mine with an intensity that stole my breath. The faintest curl of a smile tugged at his lips. Dangerous and knowing. I knew, in that instant, that the moment of temptation had arrived. I could step back, force myself to resist, turn and run from the pull, from the bond, from him, or I could step forward. And nothing in me wanted to resist anymore. The forest held its breath. The river stilled, and the bond between us flared, bright, undeniable, and unstoppable. I was on the edge of crossing a line I could never return from, and I wanted to. The forest felt wrong. I could sense at the moment. I stepped out of the pack house that morning, the air heavy, pressing against my skin, carrying a scent I couldn't place. It wasn't the usual mix of pine and damp earth. It was acrid, sharp, dangerous. Something old. Something hungry. I tried to ignore it. Tried to tell myself it was only my imagination. But the pull of the bond hummed beneath my ribs. It's a warning I could not dismiss. Cale was waiting at the edge of the clearing, his figure shadowed by the trees, eyes sharp as silver knives. When he saw me, he moved closer, cautious, alert. Every muscle coiled like a spring. "Something is coming," he said quietly, voice low but tense. "Something from my past. It's drawn to the bond." "Drawn to you?" My heart lurched. "Your past? What do you mean?" He shook his head, a flicker of shadow crossing his face. "Not here. Not yet. But you need to understand you're in danger, Alara. And not just from me." I swallowed hard. The pull of fear mingled with fascination, the bond thrumming as if warning me of what I could not yet see. Enemies, rivals, spirits. He glanced toward the tree line, his jaw tight. All of the above. Old debts, old enemies. Things I thought long buried have resurfaced. And you are caught in the middle because of the bond. The words sent a chill down my spine. I had felt danger before, felt the shadows stir. But this was different. It was personal, focused, real. Before I could respond, a low growl rippled through the forest. It was distant but deliberate, a sound that carried through the trees like a warning. Cale stiffened, ears twitching, eyes narrowing. "They're close," he said, moving behind me. "Stay behind me." My pulse raced as I followed him. Each step was deliberate, cautious. The forest seemed to twist, shadows curling unnaturally, every rustle of leaves amplified. My wolf growled beneath my skin, senses on high alert. Instincts screaming that we were being watched. Suddenly, a shape darted between the trees, a figure, moving faster than any human could. My breath caught. Cale's hand hovered near mine, but he didn't touch me. His eyes tracked the movement, sharp, calculating. "They know," he muttered. "They've found us." I felt a pang of terror. "Found us? How?" "The bond," he said simply. "It's a beacon. They feel it as strongly as I do. And they'll come for you, Alara, soon." The forest seemed to close in, every shadow heavy with intent. My heart hammered in my chest. I had always known the bond was dangerous, but until now, I had believed that danger was only within Kayla's secrets, his power. But now I realized the world outside him was just as perilous. A sudden movement in the tree line drew my attention. Two figures emerged, barely visible, their shapes flickering with unnatural speed. They moved like wolves, but their eyes burned red, hungry, hostile. Cale stepped in front of me instantly, his form shifting slightly. Dark fur brushing against the moonlight, silver eyes glowing faintly. The bond flared violently, thrumming through my chest, warning me to stay back. "You need to leave," Cale said, voice calm but deadly. Now I shook my head. "I'm not leaving you. A shadowy figure lunged fast and silent, and Cale reacted instantly. A blur of motion. The creature skidded to a halt, snarling, sensing the threat he posed. The air seemed to hum with power, Cale's presence radiating dominance and control. And yet the tension was tangible, too close. To reel, I could feel the pull of the bond like a tether, drawing me toward him even as my mind screamed danger. Every instinct urged me to stay back, to hide, to survive. But the bond made it impossible to detach. The creatures retreated for the moment, slipping back into the shadows, but their intent was clear. Cale's jaw clenched, eyes scanning the forest. "They'll return," he said grimly. "And next time, they won't wait." I pressed my hands to my chest, trying to steady my racing heartbeat. "What? What are they?" "Hunters," Cale said, voice low, tight with tension. "Old enemies of my kind. Ones who never forgive, never forget. They see you as a threat and an opportunity, and they will not hesitate to strike." The forest was silent again, but I could feel the lingering presence of something beyond the ordinary, something patient, dangerous, and relentless. The bond throbbed, warning me, tying me to Cale in ways that felt both comforting and suffocating. I wanted to run, to hide, to escape the unseen forces gathering around us. But I couldn't. The pull was too strong. The bond was too real. And Cale's presence, protective, magnetic, unyielding, kept me rooted. Even as fear twisted in my stomach. "We need to prepare," he said finally, turning toward me, his gaze intense. "They are coming. And when they do, you cannot be unready." I nodded, though my throat was tight, my hands trembling. I realized something chilling. The threat was no longer distant. No longer a warning whispered by the forest. It was here, real, immediate, and I was standing in the middle of it for the first time. I understood the full weight of the bond, the danger it carried, and the precariousness of our connection. Cale's past had bled into the present, and whatever forces lurked in the shadows were not idle. I looked at him, silver eyes locking with mine, and I knew without doubt I was no longer just drawn to him. I was tethered, and the world around us had shifted in ways I could not yet comprehend. The forest whispered, and the wind carried a threat. I could not see but feel the rising danger was real, and I had no choice but to face it. The night was silent, almost oppressively so. When Cale brought me to the clearing deep in the forest, moonlight filtered through the dense canopy, silver dust on moss and roots, illuminating the air in a way that made everything feel both sacred and dangerous. I followed him without question. The bond throbbed in my chest, insistent, unyielding. Every instinct screamed both fear and curiosity. I had learned to trust him, even as the shadows of doubt lingered. But tonight, something deeper waited, something I was unprepared for. He stopped beside an ancient stone. I discovered and etched with symbols that glimmered faintly in the moonlight. My pulse quickened. I recognized none of the runes, but something primal resonated inside me, a strange familiarity that made the hair on my arms rise. Cale. I whispered, fear and awe mingling in my voice. "What is this place?" He ran his fingers lightly over the stone, brushing against the carvings as if awakening something. "It is a marker," he said, "a warning, a record, and a connection." His voice faltered slightly, unusual for him, and my curiosity spiked. "A connection?" I asked, stepping closer, trying to see the symbols. "To what?" Cale's silver eyes met mine, holding mine with a gravity that made my stomach twist. "To you, Alara, to your bloodline. You were born into this world long before you knew it. And now, the truth must be revealed." My heart thudded painfully. "My bloodline. What do you mean?" He took a deep breath, as though bracing himself. "You are tied to the prophecy, to the ancient struggle that has endured for centuries. Your family, your ancestors. They were guardians, bound to the supernatural realm in ways your mortal life cannot explain. And the bond you feel the pull to emit was never chance. It was written long before you were born." I stumbled back, head spinning. "Written. Prophecy." I don't understand. Kale stepped closer, lowering his voice. You are not just a human caught in our world. You carry a lineage that holds the key to balance or destruction. Your blood. It is marked. I felt as if the ground had shifted beneath me. Marked by who? By what? The origin of our kind, Kale said, his tone heavy. Wolves, alphas, and even the dark forces that haunt the forests, they all trace back to a bloodline like yours. Your ancestors chose to hide it, to live among humans, to protect the legacy. But the bond with me? It is part of that legacy. And now it awakens in you. A cold wind brushed across the clearing, rattling leaves and sending a shiver down my spine. My hands trembled, heart racing. I had no idea. None of this. None of it makes sense. Kale's gaze softened, though a shadow of pain crossed his features. I know. You were meant to discover it gradually. But the threat is rising faster than we anticipated. Forces you cannot yet see are already aware of your awakening. They will come for you because of who you are and because of the bond. I sank to my knees, stunned, grasping the mossy earth beneath me as though it could anchor me to reality. All this time, my family, my life, it was all a lie. Kale knelt beside me, careful, his presence both grounding and overwhelming. Not a lie, a protection. They did what they could to shield you until the time was right. But you cannot ignore the truth anymore. You are part of something far greater and far more dangerous than you ever imagined. Tears blurred my vision. My life, the simple, ordinary life I thought I knew, was gone, replaced by shadows, prophecies, and powers that I could barely comprehend. The pull of the bond flared violently, as if sensing my turmoil, and I felt the irresistible tether draw me closer to Kale. Even as fear threatened to consume me. I don't know if I can handle this, I whispered, my voice breaking. I'm just me. I'm not ready for any of this. Kale's hand hovered near mine, fingers brushing the air without touching. You don't have to face it alone. The bond will guide you, protect you, and I will be there. But you must accept who you are. Accept your bloodline. Accept the destiny waiting for you. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my racing thoughts. But even as I struggled, the fragments of truth clawed at images of my ancestors. Shadows in the forest, whispers of power and danger, and the undeniable pull toward Kale. And then a sudden thought hit me like a hammer. If my blood carried such significance, if the bond was predestined, then everything else in my life, my family, my friends, even the enemies I could not yet see, was tied to this world now. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. The weight of centuries pressed down on me, and I realized with a sinking certainty that nothing would ever be simple again. Kale's silver eyes searched mine, filled with a mixture of concern and unspoken intensity. Are you all right? He asked gently. I shook my head, unable to speak, unable to process the enormity of what I had just learned. My mind raced, piecing together fragments of old family stories, half-forgotten tales, and the inexplicable pull I had felt my entire life. The revelation crashed over me like a storm. My bloodline, my destiny. The bond with Kalal, part of something vast, dangerous. An ancient dot, and the truth left me trembling. Shaken to my core, the forest whispered around us. Silent witnesses to the awakening of a legacy I had never asked for but could no longer ignore. I realized, in that chilling moment, that the life I had known was over, and I would never be the same again. The bond hummed between us like a live wire, insistent and unyielding. Every heartbeat, every breath carried Kale's presence into my chest. Yet tonight it felt strained. We walked along the edge of the forest, the moon casting silver shadows across the trees. I could feel his tension before he spoke, a tight coil of control and caution. And I knew instinctively that something was wrong. Kale, I said softly, keeping my voice low. What's happening? You're different tonight. He didn't look at me immediately. His eyes scanned the tree line, calculating, predatory, always aware. When he finally turned, there was a flicker of something I had never seen before: hesitation. A shadow behind the silver fire. "There are things you don't know," he said carefully, voice controlled, almost distant. "Things I cannot tell you yet." I stopped, heart tightening. "Cale, we have a bond." "You can't, I know," he interrupted, placing a hand briefly on my shoulder. The touch was fleeting, almost absent, but it set my skin ablaze. And I don't want to lie. But the truth. Not all of it is safe. Not yet. I drew a deep breath, fighting the rising panic. "Safe? You mean dangerous, don't you?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, his jaw tightened, his eyes scanning the shadows again. "Partially. But more than that, there are consequences. If I tell you everything, it will change you. Change the bond. Change us. And I cannot risk that, not yet." The words landed like stones on my chest. The bond thrummed violently, warning me, urging me to step closer, even as fear gnawed at my mind. "Change us. Or break us?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Cale's gaze flickered, silver fire dimming slightly. "Both, perhaps. And I cannot let that happen." I wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe in the bond, in his protection, in the rare tenderness he showed beneath the layers of danger. But doubt had a way of creeping in, and now it was lodged firmly in my chest. "Then why not tell me?" I asked, frustration sharpening my tone. "We face danger together. You said it yourself. If we're to survive, you're right," he said quickly, cutting me off. "You are right. But this is different. Some truths, they cannot be shared lightly." We walked in silence, the forest pressing in around us. Every rustle of leaves and distant animal cry magnified. My mind spun with possibilities. What was he hiding? Who or what was hunting us? And how much of it involved me, my bloodline, and the bond we shared? I remembered the creatures at the river, the shadows that had skulked at the edges of our world, the threats Cale had warned about. And now the weight of his half-truths pressed down on me. "You're hiding something from me," I said finally, my voice trembling despite my attempts to remain composed. "Something about your past? About the enemies? About me?" Cale stopped walking, turning to face me fully. His expression was a mixture of regret, determination, and something else, something I couldn't read. "I'm trying to protect you, Alara. You have no idea what I've had to endure to keep you safe. If you knew, if you understood fully." I swallowed hard, torn between anger and desire, fear and longing. "If I understood fully, you think I wouldn't want to stand with you?" He didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Then he said, voice low, almost a growl, "It's not that simple. The bond makes you vulnerable. The world is watching. And some truths will make you question everything you feel for me." I felt my stomach twist. The bond pulsed fiercely, thrumming in warning and longing all at once. My heart wanted to step closer, to trust him completely, to surrender to the connection that bound us. But the shadow of doubt, the unspoken half-truths, made every step toward him uncertain. "Then I suppose I must decide," I said quietly, stepping back, breaking the physical space between us. "Decide if I trust you. Or if I doubt every word you say." Cale's silver eyes flickered with something unreadable. "I do not ask for blind trust, Alara. I ask for patience, for understanding, for survival." The forest seemed to grow darker around us, the shadows heavier, almost sentient. I could feel its lurking presence of enemies, old rivals, unseen watchers. The tension of the night pressed on my chest, and then I noticed it. A faint shimmer in the distance, subtle but deliberate, like someone or something was observing us. Cale's head snapped toward it instantly, jaw tight. "They're closer than I thought," he muttered, "and they know we are aware." I swallowed, feeling a cold wash of fear. I whispered, realizing that the danger was no longer abstract, no longer distant. The bond tied us together in peril. Yes, but it also made me a target. Cale's gaze softened for a fleeting second, and I wanted to trust that softness, to step into it, to believe in it. But the doubt lingered, clawing at my mind. The half-truths, the secrets, the things he refused to reveal, all of it shadowed our connection, making the pull of the bond both irresistible and dangerous. I could feel suspicion growing, a small insidious seed taking root in my chest. If the bond could unite us, it could also break us. And now, for the first time, I wondered if the ties that bound me to Cale were a blessing or a trap. The shimmer in the trees shifted again, and the bond flared violently, warning me, tethering me to him even as mistrust threaded through my thoughts. I wanted to step closer, to trust him, to surrender fully to the pull of the bond. But the instincts in my chest, the wolf, the human, the fear held me back. And in that moment, under the moonlight, I realized something terrifying. The choice of trust had been forced upon me, and I was not yet ready to make it. The morning air carried a tension I could feel in my bones. The forest was alive in ways that no ordinary dawn should have been. Birds were silent, the wind hesitant, and every rustle of leaves felt deliberate, watching. Waiting, calculating, Cale moved beside me, silent and alert, his senses sharper than any human could comprehend. The bond throbbed through my chest, warning me, guiding me, tying me to him in ways both comforting and terrifying. But beneath that pulsing connection, unease had settled like a stone. "They're moving faster," Cale muttered, voice low, barely above a whisper. "The hunters. They're closing in, and they've learned more than I anticipated." I swallowed hard, feeling the tight coil of fear twist in my stomach. "What do they want? Why me?" He glanced at me, jaw tight. "Because of your bloodline. Because of the bond. And because they see weakness, they see opportunity." We moved cautiously through the undergrowth, the trees casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and writhe as if alive. Every instinct I had screamed danger. The forest itself seemed to pulse with it, a subtle vibration that set my skin on edge. A distant sound, a snapping of a branch, made us both freeze. Cale's hand moved subtly toward mine, though he did not touch me. His eyes scanned the tree line, silver fire flaring briefly, as if catching a signal only he could sense. "They're here," he said grimly. I tried to keep my breathing steady, but my pulse hammered in my ears. "Here?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Close enough," Cale said. "And they are targeting you specifically." My stomach dropped. "Targeting me, but I'm not human anymore," he finished for me. "You're part of the world they've always feared, and now you are visible to them." We stepped into a clearing, and I froze. The signs of intrusion were unmistakable. Marks on the trees, deep scratches in the earth. Broken branches, carefully arranged warnings, threats, signals. "They're marking territory," Cale muttered, moving to stand in front of me. "They want to control the forest, to control you, to control the bond." A flicker of movement caught my Aja shadow darting between the trees. And then another. Then another. Figures emerged from the shadows faster than humans should be able to move, eyes glowing faintly red in the dim light. My pulse spiked. "Cale," I whispered, fear threading my voice. He did not hesitate. His form shifted slightly, the hint of dark fur brushing the edges of his shadow, silver fire lighting his eyes. Every muscle in his body coiled, ready to protect. But even with him there, I could feel the magnitude of the threat pressing down. "They're not alone," he murmured. "And they're not waiting for us to act." Suddenly, a branch snapped sharply, much closer this time. My heart leaped into my throat as I saw figures emerging from every side of the clearing hunters' rivals. Predators. The air seemed to hum with their intent. And I could feel the pulse of their aggression as clearly as I could feel Cale beside me. My wolf growled beneath my skin, instincts screaming to flee, but the bond held me rooted. The predators were closing in, circling, testing our reaction. My chest tightened, fear and adrenaline intermingling with the magnetic pull of Cale. "I can't," I began, but Cale's hand on my shoulder stopped me. "Not yet," he said firmly. "We can survive this." If you trust me, I wanted to. I wanted to step fully into the bond, to believe in him, to surrender to the connection. But doubt lingered like a shadow in the corners of my mind. Half-truths, secrets. The fragments of his past I felt them all weighing down my trust. The hunters shifted again, closing the circle. I realized with a cold certainty that the choice to fight or flee had been taken from me. We were trapped. A sudden rustle to my left made me spin, and I saw movement near the tree line. One of the hunters lunged forward almost silently, heading straight for me. My wolf snapped, a growl rising from deep within, but before I could react, Kale moved like a blur. He intercepted the figure, and the collision sent both of them skidding, the predator snarling in frustration. "Stay close." Kale barked, his eyes scanning for more. Another movement, a flicker of red eyes at the tree line, made my stomach drop. These weren't ordinary attackers. They were predators in every sense, and they had me squarely in their sights. The bond flared violently, plead me toward Kale even as fear clawed at my mind. I wanted to step back, to run, to hide, but the predators were closing faster than I could process. "We need to move," Kale shouted, voice urgent, commanding. He grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the denser forest, weaving between trees with agility I could only marvel at. Branches whipped against my face, thorns tearing at my clothing, but I didn't care. The only focus was survival, the only anchored the bond that tied me to Kale. And then I realized something worse, even as we ran, even as Kale protected me with skill and speed. There was a predator we had not accounted for, one moving silently among the trees, watching, waiting. Someone or something that had anticipated every step. Every escape route. My chest tightened, the realization slicing through me. We were not just being hunted. We were being cornered, and no matter how fast we ran, how skilled Kale was, I could feel the inevitable tightening of the trap. The shadows were closing in, and for the first time, I felt the full weight of vulnerability. The forest that had once been alive with mystery now felt suffocating. Every tree, every shadow, every rustle was a potential threat. And I knew with a sinking certainty that we could not outrun all of it. The predators weren't just around. They were waiting for the moment to strike, and I was standing in the middle of it, trapped, taut, cornered, and utterly aware that the danger was no longer a warning whispered by the wind. It was real, imminent, and closing in fast. The forest pressed in around us, dark and alive, shadows moving in rhythm with the tension thrumming between us. My chest heaved, heart hammering, not just from running, but from the pull that the bond carried, force I could no longer ignore. Kale's presence was overwhelming, protective, magnetic, impossible to resist. Every step he took drew me closer, every glance searing through me like fire. The danger that surrounded us, the predators closing in, only sharpened the intensity, heightening everything I felt. I can't stop thinking about you," I whispered, almost breathless. Though the words seemed absurd in the face of the threat, he stopped, turning fully toward me, silver eyes glowing in the moonlight. The tension in his shoulders eased only slightly, replaced by something deeper, raw, and unspoken. "I know," he said softly. "I feel it too. Every heartbeat, every breath, it pulls me to you, Alara. I shouldn't, but I can't fight it anymore." The bond flared between us, hot and insistent, tying our emotions together in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. I could feel his pulse in my chest, matching mine, and my wolf growled beneath my skin, restless and unsettled by the intensity. I took a tentative step forward, drawn to him despite every instinct screaming caution. "Kale, we shouldn't," I said, though my voice wavered. "There's danger hunters, enemies, everything you've warned me about." He closed the distance, the space between us shrinking to nearly nothing. "I know," he murmured, his hand hovering near mine. "But the bond doesn't care about danger. The bond doesn't wait, and neither do I." I shivered as the invisible tether tugged tighter, a magnetic force I could not resist. My hands hovered near his chest, the space between us charged with tension so thick it felt like electricity. Every instinct told me to stop, to step back, to resist, but every other part of me burned with desire I could not deny. Cale. I breathed, voice trembling, caught between fear and longing. His hand finally brushed mine, and the simple touch sent a jolt through my entire body. The world narrowed until only we existed the threat. The shadows, the hunters, all vanished into the periphery of my mind. I've wanted this, he confessed. Voice low, rough, honest. Since the moment I felt the bond. Since the first glimpse of you. And I don't care if it's forbidden, dangerous. I can't stay away anymore. My chest heaved as I stepped closer, the pull between us undeniable. The forest seemed to fade, replaced by the intensity of his presence. The heat of his gaze, the knowledge that every heartbeat, every fiber of my being was drawn irrevocably to him. I wanted to speak, to tell him I felt the same, but words failed me. Instead, I reached up, brushing my fingers against his cheek, feeling the warmth beneath his skin. His eyes softened and he leaned toward me, just enough for our foreheads to touch. The moment stretched, suspended in time, charged with the forbidden, the dangerous, the undeniable. My heart screamed, my pulse roared, my wolf growled in a mixture of warning and longing. I began, but the words faltered as his lips brushed mine, not fully. Not yet, but close enough to ignite something deep within me. A fire flared through me, fierce and consuming. The connection of the bond, the proximity of his body, the warmth of his breath, it all pulled me toward him like a tide I could not resist. And then a sharp, inhuman screech split the night, tearing through the forest and shattering the fragile intimacy of the moment. We both froze, instinct snapping to survival. My pulse leaped, the bond flaring violently as if warning of imminent danger. The sound was close to closed, filled with malice, with the intent to strike. Cale's eyes widened, silver fire brightening as he scanned the darkness. "They've found us," he hissed, grabbing my arm. His grip was firm, protective, grounding. I stumbled slightly, heart still racing from the interrupted intimacy and now from raw fear. How? How did they get here so fast? I whispered, panic threading my words. He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled me into the shadows of the trees, moving with lethal precision, every step calculated, every sense alert. The bond flared again, tying us together, warning me, urging me to trust him even as danger closed in from all sides. Another screech pierced the night. Closer still, followed by the low growl of something massive moving through the underbrush. My wolf growled instinctively, tense and alert. Matching my rising terror, Cale pressed me against the trunk of a tree, shielding me as the shadows shifted, red eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. The predators had come too close, too fast. Too aware of our presence, my chest heaved, both from the near kiss and the sudden palpable threat. The forbidden passion, the magnetic pull. The bond, it all burned within me, tangled with fear, with longing. With adrenaline that made the world feel unreal, Cale's hand brushed against mine again. This time as a promise, a tether, a lifeline. "Stay close," he murmured, voice low, urgent. "Do not let go. Whatever happens." I nodded, unable to speak, unable to move, frozen between desire and terror, between surrender and survival. The night was alive with threat. The hunters circled. The bond flared, and the forbidden passion between us burned hotter than ever, just as danger closed in to extinguish it. And in that instant, I realized that nothing would be the same again. Not the bond. Not Cale, not me. The world held its breath, and then a shadow lunged from the darkness, breaking the fragile tension, leaving us teetering on the edge between survival and catastrophe. The forest had erupted into chaos. Shadows darted through the trees, red eyes glinting, growls reverberating like a warning bell. My heart raced, torn between fear and the pull of Cale. The bond thrumming violently, warning me. tethering me even as panic threatened to overtake every thought. Kale moved like lightning, a blur of motion, intercepting one predator after another, silver eyes ablaze with lethal focus. I tried to follow, tried to stay close, but fear rooted me for the briefest moments, fear of the shadows, fear for him, fear of everything I didn't understand. They're stronger than I anticipated. Kale shouted over the roar of the forest, lunging at a hunter who had appeared from the underbrush. I wanted to respond, to help, to do something, but the bond pulsed sharply, reminding me of my limits, reminding me I wasn't yet ready to face them alone. My wolf growled beneath my skin, frustrated, desperate. Then it happened. A figure emerged from the shadows, not one of the hunters we had expected, but someone or something familiar. A presence from Kale's past, one he had warned me about but never revealed fully. Kale? I cried, recognition and horror colliding in my chest. He stiffened, eyes narrowing, silver fire flaring, and I saw a flash of emotion I had never witnessed before: anger, betrayal, pain. The figure stepped closer, confident, predatory. And Kale tensed like a coiled spring. "You lied to me," the intruder hissed, voice low, dangerous. "About the bond, about her, about everything." Kale's gaze snapped to me for the briefest moment, and I felt it, a hesitation, a doubt I had never seen. My pulse quickened, suspicion prickling at my thoughts. Had he lied? Was this truth half buried in shadows, waiting to explode? "Stay back, Ilara," Kale commanded, tone hard, controlled. But even as he said it, I saw the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. The intruder lunged, and Kale met the attack with lethal precision. The clash was violent, sparks of power flaring as supernatural forces collided. I stumbled back, caught between fear and longing, heart twisting at the sight of him under attack, exposed, vulnerable. "Kale," I whispered, reaching for him, but the bond pulled and strained, chaotic, untamed. Reflecting the turmoil around us, the fight intensified. Shadows moved, predators attacked, and the forest became a blur of motion and threat. I tried to intervene, but Kale's warning echoed in my mind: "Not yet. Not alone." And then the words that shattered everything. "You don't belong here," the intruder spat, voice venomous. "You were always a pawn, a tool, a mistake, and he will never trust you fully." The words hit me like ice. My chest tightened, betrayal curling through my thoughts. Kale's gaze flickered toward me for the briefest moment, and I saw hesitation, perhaps regret, but also something I couldn't read. "Is it true?" I demanded, voice trembling. "Have you been keeping me? Like this? A secret?" Upon Kale's jaw tightened. "Ilara, listen, no." I snapped, cutting him off. "I trusted you. I followed you." And now I see, before I could finish, a predator lunged from the darkness, knocking me sideways. Pain flared in my shoulder as I hit the ground, dazed. The bond flared violently, tugging me toward Kale. But I also felt the pull of doubt, suspicion, and betrayal gnawing at my heart. Kale moved to intercept the creature, but I caught a glimpse of his hesitation. The fraction of a second he glanced at me instead of the threat. That fraction of a second was enough to make me question everything. I scrambled backward, tears stinging my eyes. I can't," I whispered to myself. "I can't trust you. Not fully. Not now." The forest seemed to close around me, the chaos of battle amplifying my fear, my confusion, my heartbreak. The bond flared, demanding connection, yet I pulled away, fighting against it. The magnetic force that had drawn me to him since the first night now felt like chains I could not yet bear. Kale's voice rang out, urgent, pained. "Ilara." "Don't." But I had made my choice. I could no longer stay. Not while doubt and fear clawed at my chest. I ran, weaving through the trees, away from the fight, away from him, away from everything I thought I understood. The battle raged behind me, the sounds of predator and protector colliding, echoing through the forest. Every step I took tore at me, every heartbeat a reminder of the bond I was denying. but the suspicion, the half-truths, the uncertainty of his past, and the threat of betrayal were stronger than the pull of desire. I stumbled to the edge of a clearing, breath ragged, eyes burning with unshed tears. The forest seemed endless, dark, and dangerous, but it was also a refuge. The only place I could gather my thoughts, try to make sense of the chaos inside me, and when I finally stopped, the forest silent for a brief, fragile moment, I realized the terrible truth. Cale and I were broken, if only temporarily, but the fracture cut deep. The trust that had tethered us together, the bond that had drawn us into each other's orbit, now wavered dangerously. And worse, I wasn't sure if I could ever fully let him back in, behind me. I could still hear the distant clash of supernatural forces, the growls and cries of the predators, the chaos of the battle. But in my chest there was another sound, the ache of separation, the raw pain of doubt, and the cruel sting of betrayal. I sank to the ground, hiding among the roots of an ancient tree, shaking with exhaustion and heartbreak. The forest around me seemed endless, dark, and merciless, and in that moment, I understood with painful clarity the bond, the attraction, the destiny. It was real. But so was the betrayal, and the only choice left was to run. The forest was a living nightmare. Shadows stretched like claws, twisting and writhing in the dim light, while the distant sounds of battle still echoed through the trees. My chest ached, not just from exertion, but from the fracture that had split my heart in two. Cale's absence pressed on me with a weight I had never anticipated, leaving a hollow ache that refused to ease. I stumbled through the underbrush, every step slow and deliberate. My shoulder throbbed from where I'd fallen, but the pain was insignificant compared to the turmoil in my chest. The bond flared sporadically, a reminder of Cale's presence, of the connection I had fled, but I refused to reach for it. Not now, not until I could understand what had happened. The forest seemed to respond to my hesitation. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a branch sounded like a warning. I could feel eyes on me, unseen but keen, predators observing my every move. Fear gnawed at me, insidious and constant, but something deeper pressed against it on instinct. A spark of determination that refused to let despair claim me completely. I pressed forward, guided by instinct more than sight. Each step took me deeper into the darkness, away from the clearing where chaos had erupted, and into a part of the forest I did not recognize. The trees were older here, twisted and ancient, their roots forming natural barriers and hidden pathways. The air smelled of damp earth and secrets long buried. I paused to catch my breath, pressing my back against the rough bark of a massive tree. My wolf growled beneath my skin, tense and restless, sensing danger I could barely comprehend. My pulse raced, the bond tugging at me faintly, as if Cale's essence whispered through the distance, but I refused to acknowledge it. Not yet, think. Alara, I whispered to myself, voice low, trembling. You can't give in. You can't. You have to fight. For the truth. For yourself. A faint sound reached my ears, a soft, deliberate crunch of leaves. I froze, heart hammering, every sense straining to detect the source. Movement, subtle and deliberate, drew my gaze toward a shadow slipping between the trees. It didn't resemble any of the predators I had encountered before. It moved with purpose, almost human, but its eyes, glowing faintly amber, betrayed its unnatural nature. I swallowed hard, the knot in my chest tightening. Should I hide? Should I flee? Every instinct screamed danger, but curiosity pried at my mind. There was something about this presence, something familiar yet cryptic, that drew me forward despite my fear. You shouldn't be here. A voice murmured from the shadows, low and melodic, almost like a warning wrapped in silk. I stepped back instinctively. Who's there? My voice sounded small in the vast oppressive darkness. The figure emerged, only partially visible, cloaked in the dim light of the moon filtering through the canopy. A hand extended toward me, not threatening, but deliberate. You're lost, the voice said, calm and measured. And the forest. The shadows. They will consume you if you linger. I swallowed, the chill of fear creeping up my spine. I'm not sure which way to go, I admitted, heart racing. I've lost my way. The figure tilted their head slightly, amber eyes reflecting a strange, cryptic understanding. Then perhaps you were meant to find me. There are truths here, hidden, waiting. And only those willing to face the abyss can hope to survive it. A shiver ran down my spine. The words felt like both warning and promise. The abyss? I asked, voice trembling. What do you mean? The figure didn't answer directly. Instead, they reached into their cloak and produced a small weathered pendant, dangling it gently before my eyes. The symbol etched into the metal was ancient, faintly glowing, and it stirred something deep inside me, an echo of memory. A connection I didn't fully understand. This is for you, the figure said, voice soft, deliberate. A clue, a key, a guide, but it will only help if you choose to believe in what it represents.